Hey everyone, welcome to Christina Cakes It. On this episode, I'm showing you how to make the best ever blackberry pie. So this pie recipe actually has a little bit of history behind it. I actually grew up in Central California, and if you guys know that area at all, it's like basically farmland. And this recipe came to me because somebody that I went to high school with, when we were in high school, he worked at one of the farms, and they had like a storefront where they also sold baked goods. And years later, he knew that I was into baking, and he like tracked down the recipe, and he sent this pie recipe to me because it was so good, and he knew I would love it. But now the cat's out of the bag, and I'm sharing the recipe with all of you. So before I get started making my pie, my oven is already preheated to 425 degrees, and I'm gonna go through all the different ingredients that we're gonna need, and as always, the full recipe is down below in the description. And the good news is this pie is like extremely simple to make. Like literally anybody can make this pie successfully. So the ingredients we're using today are pie crust, 3 cups of blackberries, but you can use any berry that you like, 2 cups of sour cream, 1 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of flour, 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice, and optional is egg wash for our pie crust. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to, of course, roll out my pie dough and place it into my pie pan. And the recipe that I'm using for this pie crust is below. And I like this recipe because it makes a lot of dough. You can either use the recipe as listed for 2 separate pie crusts, or what I like to do is I like to use the recipe below for 1 pie crust, and then I have a lot left over for decorations. As you guys know, I love all of my pies to look very pretty, and they always get decorated. So I'm just gonna start by rolling out my crust. Have a little bit of flour here to put on my rolling pin if I need it, which I do. And the trick to pie crust is you want to turn it every, like a quarter turn every few rolls. And the other thing that's really helpful that you guys have heard me share before if you've watched any of my pie episodes is to get a pastry mat. So I love my pastry mat. It has saved me a lot of headache when rolling pie crust, or I even use it for cookie dough as well. I'm gonna put a little flour here because it's still sticking just a little bit. So after I have my pie crust rolled, I am going to transfer it to my pie plate. I'm using a 9-inch pie plate. This recipe works for an 8 or 9-inch. So you guys probably saw as I was rolling, there was a little bit of a tear in the crust, but that's not a big deal. You can just kind of transfer some and just like do a little crust transplant and roll it, you know, over. So there was a little tear when I moved it, that happens as well. So I did another little crust transplant. Nobody will see that. So this crust recipe makes a lot of crust, as I mentioned, so I'm just gonna use some kitchen shears and cut away all of my excess. You could, of course, use a store-bought crust, but I'm a little bit of a pie crust snob and I just would never do that. But it does make it quite a bit easier. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm just taking the edges and I'm folding them under. And now I'm gonna go through and crimp my edges, and to do this I'm just taking my index finger and I'm going to press with my finger and my thumb just like carefully. So I'm actually gonna set this into the fridge to just chill a little bit more. That's optional, but it's gonna help the pie crust keep its shape. And I'm actually gonna work on making a few more crust decorations while this is in the fridge. So I'm just gonna take my remaining dough and I'm gonna re-roll it out. And my vision is I wanna put like little bows around the edge, so we'll see how this goes. can see, I just took my rectangle cutter and then I'm just gonna pinch the middle together. This is like bow tie pasta. So I'm gonna add a little center strip of dough onto each bow, just to make it look a little bit better. But I'm going to adhere it with a little bit of egg wash that I'm brushing on. So it's like glue. So I'm gonna do this for all of my bows, and I'm gonna just continue making more to cover the edge of my pie crust. So now that I have all my little pie crust bows ready, I'm gonna go ahead and adhere these to my pie crust before I start my filling. So I'm gonna use my egg wash again and brush the back of my bow and just stick them on. So I'm gonna put it back into the fridge just to chill and set a little bit while I work on the filling. So to finish our pie, it's very simple. So I'm gonna take my 3 cups of blackberries and just pour them into my pie shell. Spread them around a little bit. And I'm gonna sprinkle the lemon juice over the berries. Next, I'm going to take the sour cream and mix it with the sugar and the flour. I should mention that you could use cornstarch in place of the flour in this recipe and use a gluten-free crust, and you can make this whole pie gluten-free really easily. And now I'm just going to top my berries with this mixture. And then the final step is I'm just going to brush my crust with this egg wash. So now my pie is ready for the oven, and this part is really important. It is gonna bake at 425 for 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna reduce the heat to 325, and it's gonna continue baking for 40 more minutes. All right, so pie is out of the oven and it has cooled and it looks great, and I am so excited to have a piece of this pie, and I definitely hope that you guys try this recipe. And if you have any other ideas for pies that you would like me to make, put them in the comments below. And if you like this episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.